When I left home for the first time, I went to Vernon Downs, New York. At 16, I got my first parimutuel racing license. I've always been involved in racehorses in one way or another. I did my residency and internship at Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center in New York. Sure, I could try it. I could be the mayor. Never been in politics before in my life.
Didn't know what you were in for.
Had no idea. One of the truest things my mother ever said to me is she said, even when you were a kid, you wanted to save the world. And she always felt I spent too much time trying to save the world, and I should spend more time saving me.
Duane, thank you for taking the time to be on our channel. So we're in Horseshoe Bend, Arkansas. Have you lived here a long time, and where did you start out your life?
Well, we've lived in Horseshoe Bend for 11 years now. Both of my wife and me grew up in northern New York, up by the Canadian border. So when you say New York, everybody thinks New York City. I went to graduate school in New York City, but we had a 250-acre horse farm in the Adirondack Mountains, and it's very similar to Arkansas. It's green rolling hills, more cows than people. The only difference is in New York we have dairy cows, and down here they have beef cows.
I guess another big difference would be the weather. Obviously it's a lot colder.
Yes, we didn't miss the cold. That was part of coming down here, and I think God must have wanted us here, because when we came down here it was in December, and that winter it was about 75 degrees here. And we sat on our friend's back porch and had a glass of wine, and we thought, this is wonderful. We could live here. Now, it's never been 75 since then during the winter, ever. But it was that year, and we were excited about it. So we came back a month later, and we looked at 26 houses in one day, and we picked a house.
Wow.
And we bought it, and we decided to come down here.
So only two locations then, Arkansas and New York. Those are the only two places that you've lived?
Well, no, I've lived in a lot of different places.
Okay.
I did my undergraduate work in Montreal.
Oh, wow.
And I've lived in Texas before. And
wow, okay.
June hasn't. June grew up where we lived in Lewis County. I think June was 15 miles from where she grew up. So this is the first time that she's ever actually moved away. And I had a farm in the Catskill Mountains when I met June. I had a horse farm in the Catskills. When I was a kid, my uncle had a farm, and I used to buy Holstein calves. At that point, you could buy a Holstein calf for $5, and you could raise them up on milk supplements, and I could turn around and sell them between $40 and $60 when they were 6 months old. At 12 years old, I bought my first horse, and I never bought another cow in my life.
Why is that?
I fell in love with horses. I mean, it was just, I bought a little paint horse. He wasn't registered or anything fancy. I think I paid $125 for him, and fell in love with horses. And other than when I was in New York in graduate school, I've owned horses all my life.
Do you still ride horses? Did you ride horses back then?
We had riding horses, and we had thoroughbred race horses. We bred world-class champion halter horse paints. And we had riding stables. We had about 30 kids come every Tuesday evening at the farm. I had 3 riding instructors, and we had 7 horses that we used just in the riding stables alone. It was really wonderful to teach kids how to ride and give them that interest, so to speak. And like I say, I've ridden and broke horses most of my life. It was a way I made money when I was younger. From probably 12 to 16, I used to train horses for people. When I left home for the first time, I went to Vernon Downs, New York. I came out of an abusive home, so I couldn't wait to get out of home. In fact, I skipped 11th grade in high school. I went to summer school, and skipped that grade and graduated earlier. And I was at Vernon Downs, New York. At 16, I got my first parimutuel racing license. And I was working with horses there. I've always been involved in racehorses in one way or another.
Do you have a farm here in Arkansas?
No, we have horses all over the place, which I hated. And when I was a kid, I never had my own farm. I always had to rent a farm or rent stalls from someone else. And I can't say I really like this now. I came to Arkansas to retire.
I apologize for the interruption in this video, but in this next section, Duane starts to talk about his career in psychology, and he uses words that social media platforms like YouTube just don't like. So I cut those words out of the conversation. The words are related to mental health. Hopefully you can put 2 and 2 together and figure out what those words are. Now let's get back to the interview.
People often ask me, how'd you get to Arkansas? One of the things I did as a psychologist was research. I did my residency and internship at Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center in New York. And when I was there, I wrote a theory of that was picked up by a Dr. Steve Silverman from Yale University. And because of that, he asked me to go to Yale, and we were doing groundbreaking research on completed tapes. We actually had tapes sent to us from all over the country, video and audio tapes of people who themselves on tape. And we were doing voice analysis, and we identified parameters of speech that you could identify lethal people. So how I ended up down here, the project from Yale had been moved to Vanderbilt University in Tennessee, and there was a professor there doing it. His wife, Marilyn, had called me and asked me, this guy was going to retire, would I take over the project? And I could come down here, do the research, and then I could teach psychology. I'd had a massive heart attack, and I couldn't do so much physical work anymore. I thought, this is good. You know, I can be a professor, I can do research, and that's what I'm going to do. Then everybody kept saying, but if you're going to retire, shouldn't you retire? And
right?
It'd been a number.
Doesn't sound like retirement.
And it'd been a number of years since I had actually listened to people dying on tape, and that's extremely
difficult,
trying. I changed my mind at the last minute, said I don't want to take the project, but we'd already bought the tickets to come to Memphis. So we had 2 friends that lived here in Horseshoe Bend, so we thought, well, let's go see Bobby and Linda. And we did. We called them, they came and picked us up, and that's how we got to Horseshoe Bend.
I see.
Kind of the long way around, but like I say, it was a beautiful December. It was the nicest one I've ever seen.
Yeah. So getting into psychology, you said you came from a little bit of a turbulent childhood. Do you think that, I know you mentioned that people said you like to talk, maybe you should get into psychology, but do you think that had something to do with the origin of you wanting to get into it?
No, I'll tell you exactly how I got into psychology. It's pretty simple. I was married and I had 2 beautiful kids, and we were married for 9.5 years, and it just wasn't working out. So we decided to get divorced, and I went into a state of depression, like anybody would, very depressed. And a friend of mine kept saying, you should go talk with someone. You should go talk with someone. So finally I thought, yeah, I should do something here. So I went and talked with a lady, and I won't give you her name, but she was a therapist up in Montreal. Beautiful woman, smart lady. So I went and talked to this woman. Now, I saw her for about 2 hours. I don't think she asked me more than 11 questions in 2 hours. And when I walked out of there, I thought someone had taken 100 pounds off from me. I felt okay. I understood what was happening to me. I knew I needed to bring my children back into my life more than they were. And I was so amazed that someone could do that just by talking to you. So that was really the hook of, boy, this is really something. That's kind of how I got into it. But I will tell you this, there's not a good therapist I've ever met in my life. And I've met a lot of famous therapists, from Salvador Minuchin to Tom Todd, Alice Greenberg, very famous people. Every one of them had a bad childhood. Most therapists come from understanding what somebody's going through. Do you have to have a heart attack to treat a heart attack? No, but being a therapist is different. When you pick a therapist to talk to for a mental reason, you need a therapist that you feel comfortable with, and you need to feel that you can trust this person, because you've got to be able to tell them anything. Okay, when you go to a dentist and you want a cavity fixed, any dentist can fix your cavity. You don't even have to like them. When you go to talk to somebody about the most personal things in your life and the deepest hurts you've suffered, you need to feel that you can talk to this person, and you need to feel you can trust them. And if you don't, you've got the wrong therapist. One of the truest things my mother ever said to me is, she said, even when you were a kid, you wanted to save the world. And she always felt I spent too much time trying to save the world. and I should spend more time saving me.
Do you think that your desire to save the world is why you became a mayor of a small town in Arkansas?
No. I was foolish enough to listen to a lot of other people. I mean, I guess it was saving the city, because the city's a mess.
Yeah.
And it was even worse.
And we're talking about Horseshoe Bend.
Yes.
Yeah, Horseshoe Bend, Arkansas.
But what happened is, I decided I was going to go to the Republican GOP meeting and meet people, just to meet people. So I did, of course. And of course, everybody says, you know, what do you do? And what did you do? And whatever. And the head of the party said, you know, you should consider running for office. And I was like, well, I don't know. Well, of course, then you get all these people working on you. And I'm thinking, the mayor that was here before only worked 2 days a week.
Okay.
He was a real absentee mayor. Signed the checks. He was gone. City kind of ran itself. Well, the city was running itself, but right into the ground. And there was a district that was overtaxing people and had destroyed many of the amenities. We went from 26 amenities that people enjoyed down to 6. In fact, there was a riding stables here with horses gone. I certainly have experience in business and have experience working with people. So I thought, sure, I could try it. I could be the mayor. Never been in politics before in my life.
Didn't know what you were in for.
Had no idea the dirtiness,
how divisive it can be
of local politics. Now, I'm friends with a lot of senators now who tell me, oh, it's not that bad up on the hill, so to speak. I don't know whether it is or not, but everybody says the local level politics is where it just gets dirty. And I see 2 types of people going into politics, and it's sad. I think you get people like me who are not politicians, so I don't think about how this is going to make me look or whether I should say this or measure every word. I don't act like I'm doing therapy with someone. I tell people the truth. That's not politics, not even good politics.
Yeah.
But then you have people that want the job for the power and the prestige of it. And they'll say anything to get the job. Really.
What's your greatest accomplishment that you've had as a mayor?
I would say my best accomplishment is I've got a number of grants. And the first grant I got was for a children's reading group. When I was a young kid, I didn't like school, hated school, and especially math and stuff that's just pure logic and boring. But I always had a horse book underneath my book. And I would read about horses. Even from the time I was a kid, I wanted to know everything there was to know about horses. So my theory in writing the grant was, if you give me a grant, I will get kids to pick what they want to read, and I'll pay for the book. And that will get kids to read more.
That's beautiful.
And it works. It was a huge success. We ran it for 2 years. We had parents come to the library. We opened the library early, and they would show up at 9 o'clock. We'd be there at 8:30. And the kids would come in. We'd give them an activity to start with while all the kids were getting there. Another surprise with that grant was I was a little worried we'd be a babysitting service. Parents would drop the kids off and they'd be gone.
Yeah.
But that isn't what happened. What happened is the parents brought the kids and stayed. They wanted to see what we were teaching the kids, and they wanted to be a part of it. That was probably the best ever. And of course, we had great Halloween and holiday
turned
parties.
Into something more than what you even.
It turned into a really great learning experience for the parents and for the kids. And we actually got very positive feedback where kids were now reading, which I knew they would. You know, I said to these parents, let them pick the books out. The parents supervised it, so they couldn't get any crazy
whatever
books.
books they wanted, yeah.
But, you know, there were girls that wanted to learn about cats and kittens, and that's their books. Well, who cares if they read? Because if it's something you want to know, you will read. And that's what these kids did.
That's
and
great.
A lot of these kids got much better grades at reading and turned into readers. And also, they created a library that they had at their house because this was their books. They got to take them home.
Wow, that's great.
So
that's cool. That's a great accomplishment.
I think that was a good accomplishment. We had a youth employment program where we employed kids and got them to understand the value of working and getting paid for it. And what are you going to do with that kind of money? That was a good program. I got a number of grants, and I redid our recycling center where we now make money off that recycling center. We bale cardboard and we bale plastic. Before, we were paying a company to come get that, and we were giving it to them for nothing. Now the city actually makes money off that. So that's probably 3 things off the top of my head I'd say that we did that were good things for the city.
That's great. Let's get into marriage a little bit. You mentioned your wife, June. How did you meet?
When I finished my master's in New York, that's how I ended up in the horse farm outside of New York City that I got. I was really burned out. I was doing 18-hour days because I was doing double the workload in graduate school. Then, of course, I was in doing the research. I went to a real estate agent in New York and I said, I need to get out of this city, at least on the weekends. So they sent me way up to Stamford, New York, about 3 hours out of New York to look at a place to rent. And I thought, I'm going to drive back over to Delhi, which is where I got my veterinary science degree, and see if my old horse partner Pooch is still around. Well, he was, and the house right next door was for sale, or for rent. So I rented it, and that got me out of the city. Well, then the farm next door became available, so I took the farm next door. In between those 2 big farms, Pooch's farm and mine, was this little white house. There was a lady there with 3 kids, and she was going to Delhi to be a secretary, and she needed some money. So I said to this woman, well, would you like to be my secretary? I need somebody to type papers. I can tell you, I write my best stuff between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning. At 3 o'clock in the morning, my mind is going like this. Well, her kids would be sleeping. She would walk down the road, probably from here to the next neighbor, and I had a word processor that was really nice, a Brother word processor. Whatever I would be writing by hand, then I'd just hand it to her and she'd put it in type. Then I could print it off right there. Well, then I could call FedEx and I could send it to Yale, or I could send it to Columbia, or wherever it had to go the next morning. So June's sister was my secretary. And I actually met all of her other sisters, or most of them anyways, before I met her. That came down to see Doris was her name. She stopped being my secretary. She met this guy and they had bought this bar. And the first time I met June was at this bar. I went down to see Doris, and June and her daughter was there. And it's funny because we both laugh about this now. When we both met each other, I'm not sure we really liked each other. So our first response with each other was kind of that, I don't know if I like this person or not. And then she came back down to see her sister, and I don't know, it was months later. It wasn't right away. We just clicked. And I guess the way I've told people is we started talking about 10 o'clock at night, and I don't think we stopped talking all night long.
So how long after meeting her did you guys get married?
Oh, it was 2 years before we actually got married.
Okay,
We
so you dated for 2 years.
Yeah, we dated for 2 years, and it was a long distance relationship, and I have to give her credit. She did the driving. It was a 2.5 hour drive from north to the farm.
Yeah.
And she'd leave work at 4 o'clock Friday afternoon, and she was there by 6:30 at night at the farm, and then we both would get up and head to leave early Monday morning. We've been married 33 years.
It's a long time. So what's a secret to that longevity?
Probably the most important thing is I think June and I have always been friends with each other. I mean, we're married and we're husband and wife, and we work side by side for 32 years in the auction business, and that's hard work. That's physical hard work. And that's another pretty unique thing to think that we work together for 32 years every day of the week. I think we've always been best of friends.
What does God mean in your life?
I think religion for me has always been a belief in God and a higher power. And there's a standard of living that you should try to achieve. I think the commandments are there for a reason. I'm not sure. I haven't broken most of them like everybody. And certainly hated doing that and asked for forgiveness. And I think that there is a heaven, no doubt in my mind. It's funny how people think science and religion doesn't go together. I used to do research on Kirlian photography. You know what that is?
Mm-mm.
All right, well, Kirlian photography was developed by a Russian, and what he did is he wanted to take a picture of the aura, the electromagnetic sphere around the body. He was the first person to take pictures of an aura without a camera. You need a 9mm battery, and you create a spark. If you look at an atom, you have electrons going around the center nucleus of an atom. Now those electrons are going around there, and they're held together by what's called van der Waals forces, or centrifugal force. What Kirlian believed is by adding that extra current, you raise those electrons to the next energy level. When they contract, when those van der Waals forces pull them back to their original orbit, they shed light. And in shedding that light, you can get a picture of the aura of your body. And I've taken those of my body. The first one I took was in 1979, I remember, and it was a picture of my thumb, and I had a cut on it, and you can actually see where there was a disruption in the energy field. But if you can imagine these beautiful rays of sun coming from your body. Now what Kirlian did with his experiments is he did it with plants and he did it with animals. He took rats and he cut their tail off, and then he took a Kirlian photograph, and the tail was still there. And he'd take a leaf and he'd cut a leaf in half, but the outline of the leaf was still there. Now in psychology, we have a thing called the phantom limb. We know when people lose arms and legs, they can still feel them. They still have the experience of them being there. And this would argue for Kirlian photography. Well, then if you read any of John Moody's stuff, near-death experiences, most of these people have experiences where, in a sense, they've talked to God. And when you look at life reviews that they've had and things that have happened, the evidence just clearly shows that there is a heaven. I think if you look at the way the world is right now, you're pretty much sure that there's a hell. But religion for me is a belief in God and a higher power and a supreme being that loves us and cares for us and created us. One of the things I like about Donald Trump in politics, whether you like Donald Trump or you don't like Donald Trump, that's up to everybody's personal choice. But what you have to credit Donald Trump for is he is the first politician that has brought God back to politics. He's made it okay to talk about God. He's made it okay to reference God. He's made it okay to try to live like God. And now we have Charlie Kirk, my God, who has done so much of that to bring younger kids to the realization that there is a God, there is a way to live your life. And when you live this way, you don't have to worry. You don't have to face all the triumphs and sorrows. And that's not that, bad things don't happen. It's interesting that a lot of atheists or people that don't believe in God, well, they blame God for bad things happening. Well, this happened. Well, if there was a God, why were those kids that were praying shot up in that church? Mm-hmm. Well, we aren't God. We don't have God's ability, his understanding. We don't know the big picture, and we don't know what it's about. Many things that have happened in my life that have been terrible. I mean, I've lived through some pretty bad stuff in my life. And at the time you're going through them, you have no understanding of what that is. And I've seen that with a lot of my clients that I've dealt with and patients. But oddly enough, if you think back of those times when you're out of them, 3 and 4 years down the road, all of a sudden they make sense. Mm-hmm. They have a meaning. And you can understand that even though this was terrible, gee, I needed to learn that. I needed that to happen. When we had the horse farm, we had an auction business. We came home, I believe it was July 14th, one day after setting an auction up, and there was a huge thunder and lightning storm going through the valley. Now we had a beautiful historic horse barn. It was the last 4-story barn standing in the state of New York, and it got hit by lightning. It blew a 30-foot hole in the roof, and it set it on fire in 3 different areas, and I had 3 horses inside there. Well, I wasn't going to let those horses burn up, so I went back in that barn, and I got the 3 horses out. Unbeknownst to me, I had a massive heart attack doing that. In fact, the doctor said the only reason I lived was because he said, you had so much adrenaline going through your system that even though you had this massive heart attack, you just kept going. I knew I physically couldn't do a lot of the things that I wanted to do, and that's why the teaching sounded good to me. You know, I don't have to do all this physical work. We don't have to put in 8,000 bales of hay or wrestle a foal to get a halter on or something like that. And I was retired the first 4 years we were down here. I did a lot of fishing, just enjoyed myself. I had a bloodstock agent call me. A friend of mine in Canada said, I found you a horse. I said, what do you mean you found me a horse? He said, I found you a horse. I said, why? What have you found? He said, I found you a granddaughter of Seattle Slew, the Triple Crown winner. So, of course, I say to my wife, well, let's just go look at this horse.
I never just go look.
And she was close. She was down at the bottom of Texas, just north of San Antonio. So down to Texas we went to look at this mare. And she was an absolutely beautiful mare, and she was in terrible condition. Her feet were all banged up. She was thin. She was in with these 2 big mares with one of those big round bales in the field, so she never got to eat till the other 2 were done eating. But she was an absolutely drop-dead gorgeous mare, and she looked just like her grandfather, Seattle Slew. So I bought her. And it was funny, when June and I were walking back to the car, she said, you were going to buy that mare because you weren't going to leave her here, were you? And I said, no.
Still have her?
So, oh yes. Oh yeah. We shipped her to Kentucky, up to Calumet, one of the top farms up there. We got her back in condition. She's a drop-dead beautiful mare. Like I say, she looks just like her granddad. Absolutely
What's
gorgeous.
What's the plan
mare.
with her? What do you plan to do?
Well, we bred her.
Okay.
We bred her 3 times now. We bred her in Kentucky at Calumet, but we brought her back to Arkansas. She's at the McDonald Farm in Arkansas. It's the largest thoroughbred farm down here. The first foal out of her we named Secret Slew.
Cool name. Yeah.
Now, well, it's a cool name because in horses, traditionally, the name tells you the bloodline.
Yeah.
Lady Secret was a silver filly and was the most famous filly out of Secretariat. So just so happens the stallion we crossed her with not only has got Seattle Slew's blood, but Secretariat's blood. So she's one of a select group of foals that have the blood of 2 Triple Crown winners in her, Secretariat and Seattle Slew.
Is there anything outside of horses where you get that break from the grind, a hobby where you do going for a walk, going for hikes? Is there anything outside of that just takes you away from being a mayor, being, maybe even when you were a psychologist in that field?
Well, horses have always been my escape, but I've always had a lot of different things. I mean, I bred dogs. I used to breed racing homers. In fact, I had 300 racing pigeons down here. And the one thing that I did learn from my dad, and that was wonderful times with my dad, was fishing. And I do enjoy fishing. I haven't done any fishing in 2 years now.
Wow.
I used to fish all the time.
And I just want to take the time to say thank you for taking the time to be on our channel and share your story, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
You did a great job. Thank you very much. From surviving a lightning-struck barn fire that triggered a massive heart attack to championing children's literacy as mayor, Duane's life is a testament to resilience and passion. His deep connection to horses, which began in childhood, remains his constant escape, even leading him to breed racehorses with Triple Crown lineage. I appreciate Duane's profound reflections on faith, science, and how painful life events often make sense years later. Thank you, Duane, for taking the time to share your story. Until next time, thank you for watching.